always, we can. I think we will eventually get around and talking about some of the production, some of the challenges for our first episode, how we kind of like enjoyed it, but maybe a little background of what your relationship with food was. Like for instance, really quickly. I did kind of grow up in a kitchen. My mom had a food court, so I remember as a kid after school being dropped off at her little like food court area in this like strip mall, and I would do homework in there. She wouldn't let me in the kitchen though. She thought it was like too dangerous and stuff because you know she has like deep fryers and things like that. But that the passion I have for food came from her, and I hate that word, and I just used it. My love for food or my affinity for being in the kitchen came from her because my mom, at her restaurant and also at home, spent the majority of her time in the kitchen. You know, her meetings when friends would come over, she would entertain them. So there's a special place in my heart of just spending time in the kitchen, and it was nice to spend time with you two in the kitchen. But what's your background?
So, as you know, guys, I'm from Iran, and food is a big part of like not only Persian or Iranian culture, but also a huge part of whole Middle Eastern culture. Like, basically, the whole concepts of family gatherings is intervened with the concepts of having food around. Also, different celebrations, whether it's religious celebration or whether it's something like going back to thousands of years ago, the food is always a major part of different festivities and different like celebrations. And I think it's also the same about a lot of other cultures around the world. Like I know for American, like Thanksgiving, food is basically that day is about like having food.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So for us, it's also like that.
4th of July this coming, right?
Yes,
That's a
exactly.
big food thing. Italians too. That's a big food culture celebration type culture. So with Persians, it's the same way.
Yeah, it's the same way, and especially like I remember all the time that we had to visit my grandparents' house. We spent times with them, and we cook or they cook, or we enjoyed the food together. And
Do you remember the first dish that like your grandparents or your parents prepared, where you were like, this is like it awakened you to like the concept of like cooking and food and stuff like that?
I can definitely tell it was like one of my grandma's recipes that because when I was a kid, everyone was gathering on my grandma's house, including my cousins and my like uncle and aunt and their kids. So my grandma was making usually on Fridays. So we gathered on her place usually on Fridays. So one of the special recipes that she was always making was also stew, or it was not a stew, sorry, it was a soup. It was green beans noodle soup that I happened to send you guys the photos.
Does that have a Persian name?
Yeah, it's ash rishte.
I'm not gonna try that, but okay, cool,
Yes.
cool.
So rishte, ash means basically soup, or like a thicker version of soup, because soup is just like, I don't know, has this thin texture.
But it's not quite a stew. It's like
It's not as like thick as a stew, or it's not as thin as it's something in between. So you can think of in terms of you can think of ash as like a creamy soup texture.
Okay.
So not like Asian, because Asian soups are usually very thin, but like French soup or like Italian soups, they are like thicker or more creamier. So I think ash in general is something closer to that like creamier texture, but it's not also creamy. It's, I don't know how to say it. It's more thick. It's just thicker, just like that, adding like cornstarch or like something like that to your stew to make it like look like
And this
thicker.
was your grandparents like
Yeah.
recipe, or it was your
it-
grandparents who made this?
Yes,
and
yes.
and
They-
that was like one of the first dishes that.
The first dishes that I kind of had my like memories of like being cautious about the process of that dish being made, because there was like also a lot of vegetables involved in making that. So I remember like my grandma used to go to get a lot of like veggies or like green leaves, so they used on that. So as I said, ash reshte is like green bean noodle soup. So it has greens in it, it has beans in it, and it has noodles. So the whole combination is something rich, and it's a suitable thing for like family gathering. So yeah, it was one of the first dishes that I remember.
So like in like a Persian house, if there's like a celebration, is that like a staple? Like you normally would find that soup there?
Yes, you will finally find that soup if there is a good chef or cook in that house. Like, I never made that dish myself. I would love to try it, but it's one of those recipes that you have to be a good chef to get everything right about it. Otherwise,
Well, based off of that Taiwanese beef noodle soup, I think you can handle it. So
yeah, we will see. We will see.
we'll try it out. We'll try it out one of these
Yeah,
days.
definitely. I promise these two guys that I will cook it for them for the purpose of our show, and also in general, because and I am excited to try this, because
Yeah.
this was a dish that I always remembered both of my grandmothers. Also, I mean, from my mother's side and from my father's side, they were like brilliant chefs, and they had like amazing green bean soup. So
Nice.
yeah, I
Yeah,
excited
and we're
to make
not
it.
like we're not like professionals like we were talking
Yes.
about off air, you know. So our main purpose for this cooking, other than sharing with you, like what we said at the top of the show, some of our thoughts and kind of like our personality and things like that, that is also part of our background culturally, right? So I
exactly.
think it would be great, to learn a little bit more about your Persian culture while you kind of show us how to cook one of these like staple dishes.
Yes, actually, it's a very good point, because I think that food is a nice opportunity to teach people about your culture, regardless of where you are from. Your food is such a nice window to your culture, and people can learn so much by just observing how different cultures are like reacting, or like acting around their like different dishes or recipes, or in what kind of celebrations they are going to have those dishes, or what's the process of like preparing, and what's the process of like getting the ingredients. So it's just like something fascinating, and I think I would definitely love to introduce my culture by the means of making you guys Persian food. So I hope
And
you
we
guys
don't
enjoy-
want to like forget Sarah too and her
Yes.
culture. Was it a lot of like, hey, Parmigiano Reggiano in your household? Like what was going on in there?
It was at my grandpa's house.
Uh-huh.
My grandparents' house. My grandpa was always cooking and always baking. Like, we'd constantly have pizzelles. He'd make
What is that?
they're these cookies.
Ah.
I call them my family calls them waffle cookies, because you make it in a waffle type.
Did we have
Pan.
that one time? Did you bring some over?
Yeah.
It was
did.
those cookies.
Mhm,
Oh,
it was
okay.
those
Yes.
cookies.
Yes. We're going to try
Yeah.
and get her to make those too, because those are delicious.
I remember now those cookies. Those cookies were like our fuel for one of the projects that we had a tight deadline, and we were like making these short documentaries for a competition. So I remember those cookies actually very well, because on
It
those
provided
hard and long
needed
night of like deadlines.
Sustenance. Much needed. So,
They are great
where
cookies.
your grandparents, did they come from?
Yeah, my grandparents came from Italy when they were either like children or teenagers.
Nice.
They came here.
Can you get a little closer to your mic?
Yeah.
I think Yaz's mic is running a little hotter.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're fine. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just need her to be a little closer. Sorry. So they
Yeah.
came from where? Naples,
My grandpa came from
Sicily. Those are the only two
southern
places I know.
Italy, and my grandma's family came from the north. I don't know. They're
Southern
both their
Italy.
towns were like small towns that.
Bari.
Hmm?
Bari.
Bari.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right or wrong. I had a friend in grad school. He was from southern Italy, and he was coming from a town called Bari.
Oh.
Yeah.
Bari.
Or
I'd have to
maybe-
look at a
maybe-
map. I don't know any. I didn't even know where the hell Ohio, Cleveland was until I got here. So
What is
I'm
it
gonna
with you-
skip this subject and
What is it
listen.
with you people from California?
Yeah, I know that sucks. I know shortcuts in California, but I don't know where a whole state is. Okay, so Italy, and then
yeah.
they moved here. Their first
Yeah.
generation.
Yeah, my grandparents moved here with their parents, and that's my mother's family. And so yeah, I spent a lot of time like eating my grandparents' food
Ugh,
because
what a rough childhood.
yeah, it's terrible. Every time we'd go to their house, I'd be like, oh, have you eaten yet? Oh, you already ate? Well, I made this for you, so eat more.
Aw, so cute.
So terrible.
No, that's the way. And like that, my mom was the same way. First thing she says when you see her is, "Did you eat?" And then the next word is "eat."
Eat. Look, I made this for
Yeah,
you.
yeah. That's the love, though, right?
Yeah, that's love. Yeah, no, I loved that a lot.
Please feel free to like and subscribe. Ask these people.
Yeah, hit
Yeah.
that button. We want to hear from you.
It's so easy,
Mm-hmm.
and you will not get disappointed.
Yes.
Please cut that last part.